Thank you. Wait another 2 minutes or so. Hello. Please feel free to have a seat anywhere, like right in the front. Oh, okay. So you can be close to me. Yay. I like your outfit. Yeah, look at that. You look cute too, I guess. Thanks, girl. Alrighty. Can someone close that back door for me, please? Thanks. All righty, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hey. Okay, thanks for responding. Hello, everyone. My name is Kenneth. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as a program coordinator here in the CAP office. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming to our advisor training today. But most importantly, thank you for serving as an advisor to a student group. Without y'all, our student groups would literally not exist. So I hope that you all enjoy the little gift bags that I got from some freebies from our friends across the division as well as our office. And for our folks in Zoom land, hello. I'm so glad that you were able to join us. If you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. My laptop is going to be right next to me, so I'll be able to see the chat as well. And we're going to go on ahead and get started. And again, this will be recorded. So just a brief introduction to the CAP office. So our mission is to provide opportunities for students to create meaningful relationships, explore interests, and develop a sense of self and an appreciation for the community here. That is our official mission statement, but I'd like to describe our office as the office that makes UNC Greensboro home to our students. So it's not going to be a place where they're living and just going to class. It's going to be the place that they're discovering their interests. They're making their first friends. They're attending their first comedy show. They're becoming student leaders right before our eyes. And we do this in a couple of different ways. So of course, we have our student groups. We have over 250 from a wide variety, from academic to political and activist groups. So I like to say there's a student group for each and every kind of student that we have. We have our Activities and Campus Events Programming Board, our ACE. So this is a student-ran board that hosts all of the wonderful events that you see on campus or you get tons of emails about. We have a robust fraternity and sorority life with over 20 active chapters encompassing 4 councils, which is the College Pan-Atlantic Council, the Interfraternity Council, the Multicultural Greek Council, in addition to the National Pan-Atlantic Council. We also have student government. So these are the advocates for students on campus. And some of our larger traditions programming include Rocket Welcome Weeks, our homecoming, which is at the end of this month. And I hope that I see some of your smiling faces there. We have our Fraternal Leadership Institute, Spring Fling, and our Spartans of Excellence Award. I saw someone trying to get in, but I think that door is locked. So hopefully they come to this one, fingers crossed. Okay. Come on in, no worries. So here are some helpful folks that will be assisting you as you take this journey as a student group advisor besides myself. So we have event consultants. So we work with different groups to help them have their events, but for in general, student group support. So if they have any questions, they can email anyone on this list. So I work specifically with our groups A through N. Meredith Atchison, who is sitting here in the front, works with our groups O through Z and our media organizations, Ashley Jones is going to work with our Multicultural Greek Council and our College Panhandle Council. Lamar Osborne, who is one of our new graduate assistants, works with our IFC men as well as our National Panhellenic Council. And Curtis Tarver, who you'll hear from a little bit later today, works with all of our non-social Greek lettered organizations. However, it is a team that makes all this happen. So our additional support staff is Corey Potts, who serves as our business officer, who assists our student groups in everything finance, and Jason Hamilton. They serve as my intern for this year, and they will be helping with general student group information and advice and overall support. So advisor basics. I really love gifts and I love The Simpsons, so you'll see a couple of them during this presentation. So what is an advisor? So when you hear the term advisor, what are some things that come to mind without looking at the screen? Sounding board. A sounding board, absolutely. What are some other things? I want to encourage them. Encouraging, absolutely. Our students love encouragement. Challenge and support. Okay, student middle theory. So some answers in the chat are guidance and resources, provide guidance for policy, supportive listening ear, motivator, providing structure, organization, and reminders. Absolutely, all of these things are 100% fact. You are an integral part of the campus experience for our students and our variety of student organizations. So what we look for you all to provide in the CAP office is continuity from year to year. So students graduate, sometimes they just decide to email you and say, I'm no longer the president, sorry, bye-bye. That is okay, because you as the advisor will be able to provide that continuity from year to year when students do turn over to help the incoming students still be tied to the same mission and purpose, providing guidance on institutional policies, procedures, assisting students in leadership roles, and maintaining that connection to the mission of the student. And we have a full list of policies on our website, which I will be able to show you in just a little bit. Expectations. So we don't ask a lot of our advisors, but we do ask a few things. So we're going to discuss them. So you just want to reaffirm the services as they register and do advisor trainings and things like this. So this is literally the bare minimum. Each of our student groups re-register at the end of the spring semester, and we'll talk about timelines a little bit later, but just ensuring that they are actually registering their student groups. Remaining knowledgeable about their activities and consulting when needed. We don't need you to go to all of their student group events or all of their meetings, but knowing when they're happening is all right with us. Meeting regularly with student group leaders. And of course, the definition of regular is going to depend on group to group. Some groups will need you to meet once a semester. Some groups will need to meet much more frequently than that. Helping in good decision-making and effective officer transition. Our students can always use a little bit of encouragement in the good decision-making department. Providing open communication and feedback with honesty and respect. So your student group leaders are going to come to you with a lot of ideas, right? And that's the exciting part about being their advisor. So being able to help them narrow down those ideas to make sure that they're still in line with the purpose and the mission of the student group can be very important. And being present for your students. So this literally can just be an email checking in saying, hey, Bree, I was thinking about you today. How are things going? And caring about them outside of the silo that you work with them in. Our student group leaders are not just the presidents, the vice presidents, et cetera, of these student groups. They have on-campus jobs. Some have full-time employment. They're students. They're working on campus doing something. They're also involved in so many other things. So being able to be present for them and checking in on them as the students and the humans that they are is going to be very important as well. Any questions so far? Okay. So in your handy dandy folders here on the top, you will see an advisor self-evaluation. So I want you all to take a few minutes to look over this and complete it. And for the folks in Zoom, I'm going to drop the link for you right now so that you can also complete it. Does anyone need any additional time? Alrighty, so what are your thoughts about this self-evaluation? Is there anything that you were not expecting to see on here? Like, oh, am I supposed to be doing that with my student group?
And I was gonna say, I think there needs to be a third column that says sometimes or maybe.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
found myself writing that in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very dualistic check sheet, absolutely. What are some other things that you noticed?
I found it, I guess, odd in some ways about attending conferences with students, because sometimes they're not really made, I think, for an advisor to go through.
Mhm.
It was difficult for me because I had more than one group,
Yes.
so I just had to pick one and do that.
Exactly. And we thank you for your service. What are some other things you all noticed?
I'm pretty great.
Oh, okay, well, tell me something then, Marie.
No, I think just a notice with one of my groups, because kind of like Brad, I also advise multiple. And so one of them, like every single officer is new but one person. And so I think they all came back after their first year in the org because of my presence as an advisor, and like other organizations that they were involved in outside of this one, they weren't able to see that. And so I think being able to say yes to most of these kind of speaks to that, and also like that they trust my leadership to where like, I'm gonna let y'all be great, but like, I'm gonna step in when I need to.
Yes, absolutely.
And they like respect that.
Yes, we love to see it. Coretta said, way to go, Bree. So
Thanks,
kudos
girl.
to you. Some folks in the chat are saying they were personally surprised about the fundraiser part. That's not your strong suit. Trust me, I'm not good at fundraising in my own personal life. So I feel that on a spiritual level. Any other thoughts?
I thought that it kind of really highlighted at least for looking at a Greek institution or group rather, the faculty role versus the advisors that are with national. A lot of the roles on here are taken by those people as opposed to me. So sometimes you get excluded from those things. I know them from within the chapter, but I could see where that could be very difficult for a different advisor who maybe didn't have that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially a on-campus advisor who maybe was not involved in fraternity and sorority life, and they are just like, okay, wait a minute, I thought I was supposed to be these decisions, right? Absolutely. Any other thoughts? Awesome. Well, I do want to say that this checklist, some of these things are simply not going to apply to you as an advisor, right? Some of your groups won't fundraise, so your ability to fundraise is neither here nor there, right? Some other things on here, you may not even, your student group may not even ask you for. So attending conferences. If your group is not attending conferences, you don't have to do that, right? What are some other things on here? Financial records. It is up to our students to keep track of their finances, right? Come on in. It's up to our student groups to keep track of their finances, right? So sometimes the student group may not even ask this. So I wanted you all to do this spreadsheet so that you know how good of a job you're doing, and then paying attention to some things that maybe, oh, I don't actually know about their special events. I wonder if they have any signature ones. So it's going to help get your wheels turning. And thank y'all in the chat for participating and taking it as well. So we have many things that we can help you with in terms of adding to your advisor toolkit. So we have a website full of resources for you that includes our manual, advisor do's and don'ts, roles and responsibilities clarification sheet, which is one of my favorite sheets that we have, and even more. So we have plenty of resources, and they're going to be found on our website. The best way to get to the CAP website, honestly, is to just Google CAP UNCG. That is what I do all the time. But here you can see that we have more about the role, expectations, and again, these easy to click links, right? And I wanted to highlight this one sheet because, again, our student groups are going to be very unique in the needs that you have. So this is a good sheet that I always recommend advisors just take a peek at, especially during your first meeting with your head officer. It's something that you're going to go through, and it has about 30 or so statements, and you rate them from something I need you to do all the time to things that I never need you to do as an advisor. So this is truly going to help engage in those conversations and discover the needs of your student. And again, all of these are available on our website. Any questions? Cool. So advising policies. So we have a whole beautiful manual for you all to look at, which is now updated. And let's talk a little bit about liability. So as an employer, you will be considering, if you're in the capacity of advising your student group, it is a part of your employment. So this inclusion will support employees acting professionally in the scope of their duties. So as long as you are acting as an advisor, you are covered. So no worries. So let's talk a little bit about events. So last year was unprecedented, where students could not meet, we could barely meet. But this year we do have the ability to meet in person and hold events. So I did want to briefly go over these steps with you. So your student group leaders have the step-by-step manual on how to submit events, but sometimes, do they read our emails? I don't know. So it is helpful for you all to kind of be in the loop about what this process looks like. So it's a two-step process. So the first one is you have to request physical space. So as a registered student groups, your groups are able to reserve academic space like this, EUC meeting space, as well as outdoor space and unique spaces such as practice rooms in the College of Visual and Performing Arts. So once they actually have that physical space, they will submit an event request via Spartan Connect. So it's about a 30-page, what we call event contract, just to make sure that the event consultant that the group is working with has all of the information to better support the student. And again, this is to be completed by student group leaders and not advisors. We want you to help and support in this process, but again, you all are simply here to advise and not lead the student group. Contracts. If you don't remember anything else from this training, student groups have no authority to sign a contract under any circumstance. If they want to bring a bouncy house to campus, not really sure what type of event that would be for, whatever. If they want to bring a bouncy house and the bouncy house people are trying to get them to sign a contract, please contact your event consultant, because we will be able to handle all of that for the group. So again, if you remember nothing else, don't sign random pieces of paper. Any questions? Cool. Spartan Connect. Raise your hand if you are familiar with Spartan Connect. Warms my heart. Okay. So Spartan Connect is the platform that student groups will use to manage their organizations. And it's also the platform that we use in CAP to help manage organizations. So you as advisors have full access to each of the groups that you advise's page. I think I saw a hand. If you want to put your question in the chat for me, Lisa, I'll be able to answer it for you. So yes, you have access. And if you find that you don't have access, reach out to the head officer of the group, and they just need to make sure you have it. If they don't know how to do it, please feel free to reach out to me. But please contact me if you want training on Spartan Connect. I consider myself a guru. I know the ins and outs of the platform, and I'm more than happy to sit down with you and just give you a quick overhaul, because you'll be able to not only see their event requests, but you'll be able to see their finances as well through the platform. And again, students should be the ones operating their Spartan Connect account, not you as advisors. Group funding. So our student groups on campus have access to two different accounts. The first one is going to be their fundraising account, and any money that is put into the organization, so dues, actual fundraising, you know, their families back home want to donate a little bit of money to the student group. That is where that money will go. And if they ever need to purchase anything, they will submit what we call a purchase request form, and then we'll be able to use the money from their account to buy whatever they need. Again, contact us to access your fundraising account. You will be able to see this on Spartan Connect as well. And Sga Allocations. Did any of your groups go through the allocation process? Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Sga allocates money each and every semester at the beginning of the semester, and students have to go through a couple of requirements to get access to these funds. So you have to apply through SGA and they have to attend one finance allocation meeting, which happened a couple of weeks ago, but they typically happen within the first couple of weeks of the semester. And then from there, you're going to submit the application with your budget, and then you'll go to a budget hearing, and then SGA will determine how much money the group is allocated. So if you ever have any questions about the allocation process, please feel free to reach out to the SGA Finance Committee directly. I will make sure that you have their information as well. Any questions about funding? Yes.
When they go to the allocation meeting after submitting the request, are you saying SGA tells them like right then and there, or do they have to like wait?
They send them an email. Yeah.
Has to get approved by like the whole Senate. So,
Just want to make sure if I need to follow up with some people or not.
no,
No.
they probably won't.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
What other questions do you have? Awesome. Yay, so applications were due. So if your group did not apply, why are they not reading our emails? But we do have travel funding available on a rolling basis for virtual conferences. So if you work with any student groups who are professional in nature, academic in nature, they can get those conference registrations paid for. Effective officer transition. So a big part of your role is to, again, help with that continuity, which means bringing in amazing new officers. So here's a proposed timeline. Again, each and every group is going to be a little bit different, right? But this is the timeline that we recommend. So in December, you're working with your student group leaders to recognize potential in just your general body members. If you notice that there are folks on committees for your student group that are really active, maybe those are the people that you want to keep in mind for incoming positions. Mid-February. So you can always do nomination requests, right? Some student groups say, hey, maybe you're the president now. It all just, I've seen it. So it just depends on your student group culture, but recommending nominations, encouraging these student group leaders to attend OC workshops on leadership transition. And we'll have a slide about OC Leadership Challenge just coming up in a couple of moments. So mid-March, after spring break, holding elections. If your student group does not hold elections, please encourage them to, because while we enjoy our student leaders just saying, hey, Meredith, now you're the president, is that cool? Awesome. We want to make sure that elections are happening so that the student group itself has a say in its leadership. And then early April, the group is going to register for the following year with our office with the updated leadership team. And in April, providing new leadership with records of the groups and necessary training. So at this last piece is super important. So throughout the year, we try to impart on our student group leaders to keep meticulous records. So that means an event calendar, what you're spending money on, what you all have requested from SGA, et cetera, because all of this will be put into a transition packet, which is hopefully given to the new leadership so transition can be seamless. So any questions about this timeline? Do you all notice that your student groups do things a little bit different, or is it pretty on brand with this? What does that mean? Explain. You said none of the above. Talk to me about that.
Well, kind of like I was saying, my entire e-board is new minus one person. And so unfortunately, I encouraged last year's e-board to do this. And to my surprise, it was not done. And so a lot of them I'm just gonna have to be a little bit more hands-on with them so they can understand certain things, just because the continuity of them, because all of them are sophomores or juniors, is just not there about the group.
Yeah.
So we have already had a conversation with the president saying this will be happening moving forward.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, right? Like, just because they were not ushered in the most, hey, this is an easy way, hopefully they'll be able to impart that on the incoming e-board at the end of this academic year. Yeah. Any other comments, questions? Eric, I see you have a question. If you could put it in the chat for me, I am more than happy to answer it for you.
Well, I was going to say a comment. I don't know if you can hear me okay.
Yes, it just scared me a little bit. We're fine.
So for our transition, we actually go a little bit more of an accelerated piece. So we actually encourage our clubs, our student organizations, to start the officer election process by the that time between December and January so they can identify who their new officers will be for the upcoming school year. It doesn't mean that they are transitioning immediately at that point, but it gives them a semester to potentially work side by side with their counterparts to do that training in real time. And then as we hit towards the end of the semester, so as we hit March and April, when really those graduating students or those students who are really looking to transition out, they could in theory start handing over the day-to-day responsibility of those positions as well. That also allows us to have that full summer, like you're hoping for, to have the new officer, the e-board in place going into the fall, and that they've hopefully had some practical experience during their transition.
I like that. Yeah. Now, if all of our students could do that, that would be great. But I love that idea of allowing the incoming officers to shadow for a period, right? So they'll be able to ask all of the questions that they may have while the current president, vice president, et cetera, is there. Thank you for sharing, Eric. I appreciate that. Any other comments, questions? Ooh. So leadership education. So while I fancy myself a leadership aficionado, I like to leave the professionals to do what they do, which is the Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement. So if you notice that your students, after they attend Lead Academy, we'll talk about Lead Academy on the next slide, you're like, there's still a couple of things that you can touch on. Recommend the Leadership Challenge with the Office of Leadership and Civic Engagement. There are 3 levels, so the bronze, silver, and gold, and everyone starts at bronze. So if they have any questions, tell them to reach out to their event consultant, or they can reach out to me directly, and I can put them in touch with folks to get them that leadership education that is going to be so important. Because oftentimes people get these titles and they think leadership comes with it. That is not the case. So helping them and providing them with a little bit of more resources is always helpful as their advisor. And Lead Academy. So Lead Academy is our new student group leader-centered leadership conference, and it happens annually in August. It is not required, but it is highly recommended. So it is a half-day conference, and it includes topics such as peer-to-peer leadership, career development, event planning, and budgeting. So all of the presentations from this past Lead Academy is going to be located on the CAP website. So recommend that your head officers, if they did not get the chance to attend Lead Academy, check out these PowerPoints and these presentations, because it can be so very helpful on their leadership journey through leading their student groups. Any questions? Cool. So we have some fun additional resources. Sorry, I have a niece and I just love kids, so this makes me very happy. We have our student group resource room, so located in EUC Suite 227. It allows our student groups to now create marketing materials. So we have chalk, we have big butcher paper, markers, anything you can think of, we have it in that space. We also have access to laminating, poster printing, in addition to button making. So remind your student group leaders that this is available for them now. And it's absolutely free. They just have to take advantage of it. Next, we have storage lockers. Yeah.
I was gonna say, can I add that you have to get into that resource room by going through 225?
Yes.
If you're looking for the number.
Yes. Thank you, Kathleen. You have to go through 225 to get to 227. I need to make a map. But our storage lockers are also going to be located in 225 and 227. So for student groups who have larger materials, you notice that they have a lot of things that they're always carrying to and from their meetings, to and from campus. Recommend that they get a storage locker. We have a couple available, and it is on a first come, first served basis. And our last resource we have is in EU Suite 222. These are cubicle office spaces. So applications for these happen simultaneously with student group registration. So at the end of March, beginning of April, there are no more available cubicles at this time. I get emails every day about it, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, you don't have any available. But if one becomes available, please know that I will reach out to your head officers about that. Any questions about resources?
So 225 has like a card scanner to get in. I know because admission uses it, but is that door, it's always open every time I need to go in. So how often, or what are the hours for that door when they need to scan it?
Yeah, great question. So as long as the building is open, the door will be open.
Okay.
Yeah,
Except for weekends.
except for weekends. Thank you.
Now, could they scan in on the weekend, or is it a no on the weekend?
Yes, so if student groups have a cubicle, for example, they will get card access space. Kathleen, can we do it for the locker?
Well, they have to fill out that paperwork, 'cause not
Okay.
everyone does that, so
Uh-huh.
there is that form, that Google form,
Mhm.
and if they fill that out, they should all have access to
Mhm.
those, that, Becky and the, Spark Park Center gets those too, when it's uploaded.
Okay.
So
Correct.
this should be active, if someone's card's not working, like Kenneth and myself.
Okay. Thank you for the assist. Any other questions?
And that's for if they have cubicle access. they'll
So if they have a locker,
Mhm.
I'm making notes to do this. The form, there's a form that they complete with their card number and information like that. That will give them access to tap their card into 225. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you all for your attention. I'm going to hand it over to Curtis Tarver to talk about a little bit about free speech and student rights.
All right, so good afternoon to everyone here with me physically and those of you here with us virtually. My name is Curtis Tarver. I use he, him, his pronouns. I am Associate Director for Fraternity and Sorority Life in our Office of Campus Activities and Programs. So I want to start out talking a little bit about our policy on free speech, public assembly, petitioning, and amplified sound. It's a pretty long name, and it's long by design because it does cover all of those things. The policy, I know that Kenneth is going to be sharing this PowerPoint out with folks, so you can click it directly from there. It can also be found on the university's policy website, policy.uncg.edu. And so the big things that this policy oversees, it basically seeks to ensure that we are balancing everyone's First Amendment right to free speech with the educational and academic needs of the university. And so it does this in a couple of different ways. It does provide for the ability for individuals to assemble, I'll say hold events, but I will then continue on to my asterisk for that. But to assemble, hold events, and in fashions that are in concert with the educational needs of the university, also use amplified sound. Now, the reason that I provide that asterisk as I talk about holding events, so the best way for any of your student organizations to put on a campus event is, as Kenneth described earlier, so going through the process of reserving space, of putting in the event request through Spartan Connect, and completing the process that way. That being said, again, knowing the needs of the campus to gather and to speak freely, that process does still exist within this policy. What's worth noting is that this does prioritize those who are part of our university community. So specifically our students, our student organizations, our faculty and staff. Those who are from outside the university, there are a few ways that they can still kind of participate in the process. So one of the big ones is through partnering with a student organization. So what you all may find in your work with student groups is that you may be approached by groups that perhaps align with your mission, vision, values, that are looking to potentially do something on campus. So often one of the best ways to do that, again, is through a registered student group event. One of the great things about registering student group events is that you then also do have kind of the resources and things that are available to you in that fashion. What's also worth noting about the policy is that it speaks largely of the outdoor spaces on campus. And so keeping that in mind, you know, this is not built for stepping into indoor spaces and kind of, you know, certainly being disruptive of classes or other university functions, but it does provide for that outdoor outlet. Speaking again of the entities that are from outside of campus, you'll see that the policy does define the spaces that are essentially external to campus. Those are adjacent to some of the external streets. So for example, Spring Garden, some of those things that are sort of, for lack of a better term, free for all, in the sense that they are City of Greensboro property. It does also look towards campus petitioning. Again, that's a right that is specific to those with campus business or those who have been invited by those with campus business. In ensuring that we are continuing to meet the free speech needs, but also the educational needs of the university, we do have a free speech team on campus, and the policy will be right there in this PowerPoint once it is shared with you. And again, policy.uncg.edu if you would like to take in that light reading on your own. So I also want to speak a little bit about advising against hijinks. As I mentioned, my title is Associate Director for Fraternity and Sorority Life. I have absolutely no clue how I got tasked with this particular subject. And I say that jokingly, but you will find that hijinks, shenanigans, foolishness, knuckleheadedness, those sorts of things can take place in all manners of groups. And so, I know that fraternities and sororities sometimes get a bad rap, often for a self-inflicted reason. But again, any nature of organization can engage in some things that are perhaps just don't pass the eye test or the smell test. These can range in response from educational conversations to judicial or even criminal action. So there are a couple of different ways that organizations might perhaps run afoul of the policies of the law of what they need to do. So one of the things that I highlight is that of campus culture or organizational culture. I highlight the Ohio State University Marching Band. This was the case from a number of years ago, but they are a truly co-curricular experience. And by that, I mean that they are a student involvement experience that is also paired with a credit-bearing course. So a number of years ago, when this situation took place, there was an investigation of band traditions that brought to light sexualized culture, alcohol use, and hazing of rookie members. Now, as the advisor role, y'all's advisor role comes into play with that. Kind of the most analogous role in this case was the band director. This band director in particular was an alumnus of the same marching band, knew of these traditions taking place, and he did ultimately lose his job in this situation. There's also our student groups perhaps not exercising the best of judgment. So some of those might include themed parties. Sigma Alpha Epsilon at Clemson University held what they called their Christmas party. This was a holiday party themed after the famed street gang, the Crips. Texas Alpha Tau Omega at the University of Texas held a border patrol party, during which there were all sorts of unsavory Mexican stereotypes, including having to cross a border at the middle of the party. Right down the road, North Carolina State University, they had a dirty bingo program that went far beyond the reaches of simple campus sexual education and went in a direction that perhaps was not in the best of judgment. There's also hazing. So hazing is often one of the larger things. I mentioned that things can range from an educational conversation to the potential of either judicial or potential criminal sections. So hazing is against the law here in the state of North Carolina. But that being said, the general statute that addresses hazing speaks specifically of brutality or physical abuse. Now, the good thing is our UNCG Student Code of Conduct does go a step further and speaks of some of the things that are perhaps often more insidious, such as mental or psychological hazing. And so what's important about that and in your role of advisors, first of all, having those frank, honest conversations with your students and your student organizations, especially if you have any suspicion that something has begun or that something may be about to begin. And halting any questionable activities immediately. I also encourage you all to use our office as a resource. The good thing is I've had advisors who have come to me and said, hey, something seems not quite right about this practice of the organization. And we've been able to coach them through, okay, well, here's how you might want to address that, or really start at the ground level before any actual challenges occurred. So I do encourage you, if there's just something that doesn't feel quite right to you, to utilize our office as a resource. We do have a university hazing website as well, hazing.uncg.edu. We have been using for a number of years the phrase Spartan stand strong as we look to combat hazing in our campus community in a variety of different areas. So as I speak to you all's role as advisors and how you go about combating some of these challenges, first and foremost is always going to be that relationship and rapport with the organization. You'll find that that probably gets you in front of 90% of things that are out there. If you're having those regular conversations with your students, then they are either going to honestly tell you what they've got going on and give you the opportunity to perhaps disrupt through those educational conversations. Or sometimes they will not realize that what they have in mind might perhaps be below board. And as they're having that conversation, they might say something off the cuff that gives you that opportunity to interrupt as well. Regular communication with the leadership and knowledge of activities. Your role in setting and addressing the culture. So as Kenneth mentioned earlier, one of the great things about advisors is that you are that common thread. To quote our alma mater, that great unbroken band that is running through the organization for many years. We know that our students turn over. We see new students every 1, 2, 3, 4 years. It only takes for a couple of hiccups in those links of chains for that culture to go downhill and for organizations to see problems from that. Trusting your gut. So making sure that, sometimes you just get that feeling that something's not quite right. Does this pass the smell test? Am I comfortable defending this to the news and record, to the nightly news? I'll add to that to the tweets or Instagram or Facebook or whatever else that may come out that exposes an organization. Always keep in mind the university values of honesty, trust, respect, responsibility, and fairness. And if for whatever reason, a student organization does find itself afoul of policies, practices, or the law, one of the things that we are going to look at for you all as advisors is what did you know, when did you know it, and how did you respond? This is kind of, I always say advisors is kind of that great paradox in that we recognize that our students are adults, but then when something goes wrong, we go looking for the adults. And as we do that, you all are the adults. And so figuring out kind of where in that chain you had knowledge and what you did to respond to. And again, I always do like to stress that communication with our office because we give that opportunity. I think that we have been engaging with student organizations in this manner such that if there's something that just doesn't quite feel right, that gives us the opportunity to speak with you, to craft a plan, to bring in the students if necessary, so that we can address that and set the student organization back on the right foot. All right, so with that, I am going to turn it over to our next folks who I see are lurking outside the door. So I will turn it over to Robert Barker.
Thank you, Curtis. How are you doing today?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's because I'm here.
Yes,
So,
of
okay.
course.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Robert Barker. I serve as Assistant Dean and Director for the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities here at UNCG. So my office, we're located over in the EUC, actually right beside Curtis's area. And so we hang out quite frequently on a variety of different issues. And so if everyone comes see us, we're right there, 236B. We do have some different fun little giveaways and stuff. So if you pop in, you never know what you may get. So our office, we handle all student conduct here on campus and also work with faculty to support them through the integrity process. And so what I want to do today is really talk about kind of your role and how our office may kind of interconnect a little bit. We're trying to make it easy for you, right? So you don't have to think about anything. If there's a situation, just report it and we'll handle it from there. It's really kind of what you need to keep in mind as an advisor. So a couple of things I want to kind of reiterate to you all that we tell the students all the time and student organizations is that the student code of conduct applies everywhere. So whether the student organization is on campus, here off campus, they're in Greensboro, they're in Mexico, they're at their mama's house in Arizona. It does not matter if it's the summertime, if it's spring break, if it's fall break, it doesn't matter. Again, At the point that they are accepted and come to school here all the way through until they graduate, they are considered a student, and therefore their conduct is bound by the student code of conduct. And a lot of students think that, well, if they do it off campus, then it's not applicable. But it is. It's very clear in our code that we do have that jurisdiction, and we communicate that to students when we're doing these variety of presentations. A couple of things to note as well for us. Most of you probably are familiar with the legal system, either through TV or just in general, that their burden of proof is what's called beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So it's a very, very, very high standard when it comes to a violation of policy. For us here on campus, we use what's called a preponderance of the evidence, which basically means it's kind of 50% and a feather. So wherever tips the scale, either towards responsibility or not responsibility, in that kind of sense of the word. Again, nothing you have to ever have to worry about, but just want to more so give you some information about some of the differences that we experience. And then one of the great things about our relationship with Curtis and his team is we deal with individuals, and we also deal with organizations. And so what our job is looking at situations in consultation with Curtis and his staff and determine, is this an individual issue, right? Is there one knucklehead that's doing this behavior? Or is this an individual or this situation that is rampant throughout the entire organization? Again, nothing for you to decide at all. That's something that we kind of will address through our kind of various processes. And sometimes what we find is that it's both an individual and organizational situation. So what happens in our office is we actually would charge the organization for a violation. And we also can charge some individuals involved as well, because there's two different outcomes in that situation when it comes to the individual versus the organization in that process. I can't recommend enough, or I can't stress enough, that your role in this process is not to really make any decisions or determinations. It's just, if you hear about situations that are happening that are concerning, report that to our office. You can report it to us, report it to Curtis. As long as it gets reported, we will take it, review it, and make some determinations moving forward. Curtis already mentioned information about hazing. We do not tolerate hazing. We have an anti-hazing policy here on campus. We address those issues when they do come about. So that's something you do hear about. Please, please, please share that with us. There are a variety of ways to share that. We have an incident report form, which is available on our website. If you go to osrr.uncg.edu, we have, at this point, there's like 8 pictures now. It used to be 6, we added a couple more. There's like 8 pictures. The first one says report an incident. Click on that link, it's gonna take you to our reporting form. And so the reporting form allows you to share with us date, time, location, parties involved, those kind of things. If you're not sure who's involved, if you have first names, last names, whatever, any information you have, send it to us. And then what we'll do is we'll take that and we'll investigate that, work with Curtis and his team, try to figure out what's going on. But again, the biggest message for us, for advisors, if you hear something that sounds concerning, don't necessarily work to address it yourself, report it to my office, report it to Curtis's team, and we'll be happy to get that information addressed and figure out if there's an issue or not moving forward. Sometimes you may get an email from our office. Anytime that we engage in some communication with student organizations, we will oftentimes copy a variety of individuals in there, including their advisors at times. So if you ever get a communication from our office, it'll be very detailed. You'll know why now. It's because there's been some problematic behavior that we're trying to investigate and have some conversations about with the organization. So sometimes that may trigger them to reach out to you with questions so they can answer them to the best of your ability. If you're not sure, refer them to myself, my office, certainly Curtis. Curtis's team works on more the support side, right? We work on more the enforcement side and addressing those policy violations that happen on campus and off campus. Always like to put this diagram up before I depart, because as we know, some people like to know information, right? Some people are more nosy than others, and some people just want to be in the know of things. I can't stress enough that FERPA does apply in these situations. So if you're made privy to some information, that is information just for you and you alone. Don't share it with other advisors, people in your normal day-to-day jobs, those kind of things. Kind of keep that kind of to yourself, unless there's some kind of educational need for someone else to know that. If you're not sure, connect with us, and we'll kind of give you some guidance around those areas. But FERPA does exist, and so it does apply in some cases, right? So if you're not sure, certainly let us know. We'll be happy to work with that. The biggest thing is not sharing information with folks outside of kind of my office or Curtis' area when it comes to information involving students or student organizations. So cool. I'm going to open up any questions from me in my area before I turn it over to Laura to talk about Title IX. I gotta wait a full 10 seconds, Bree, before I can say that there's no questions.
I see.
Okay. So that tells me I was very thorough,
Mhm.
or people are just ready to leave, either one. And I'm cool either way, either way. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our website is very easy as well, osr.uncg, right? So it's at versus dot, uncg.edu. Lots of information on there. You can reach out to us via email as well at osr@uncg.edu. And when in doubt, just call Curtis and he'll get me, because we're kind of right beside each other in the space. So appreciate your time. I'm gonna turn it over to Laura, who's gonna talk to y'all about Title IX. I'm gonna let her know that her time is now.
I was like, she's not.
She's my stuff.
Got it.
Right here, yeah.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, how are we doing? Good. Good. It's a lot to absorb, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna try and sprint through this. A lot of this may sound really familiar to y'all based on other trainings that you have had with either myself or with Murphy Chapel, the Title IX coordinator. So I'm gonna sprint through this. If it sounds super familiar, I'm sorry, but everybody needs a little refresher sometimes, right? So first things first, let's just start at the beginning. So how many people in here already know what Title IX is? Oh my gosh, I should just go now. Or maybe we can have another guest lecturer. Who would like to do this training? Anyone? So a little brief overview. So Title IX is this large federal law that protects against sex discrimination on college campuses. So if your college or university is receiving federal dollars, then you have to have provisions for Title IX to help students, faculty, staff, community members at your university or college who may be experiencing hostile environments, to remedy those hostile environments by providing support resources or formal processes and those types of things, right? So what hostile environment, does that make sense for everybody? Yes, okay. So let's talk a little bit about like what even Title IX is and what Title IX covers. So how many people in here already heard and read through or skimmed over the new Title IX regulations that came out in May of 2020? Lots of nods, yes. Okay, so there was a little bit of a narrowing as to what Title IX jurisdiction is and what our specific Title IX policy covers, right? So where you're seeing all of these circles, there's this little tiny sliver in the middle, that's where Title IX falls. But before I get into like what these requirements are, so yes, you do have to have all of those things in order for it to fall under our policy, but I want to be really clear that if for any reason one of these things is not present, right, it doesn't mean that it isn't covered somewhere else in another policy, right? So like Robert Barker just came in here, the director of Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities, right? So just because it might not be covered under the Title IX policy doesn't mean it won't be covered somewhere like the Student Code of Conduct or another policy for like faculty and staff as an example, right? The other thing that changed a little bit with the new 2020 regulations as well is, again, sufficiently severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive. So the and is what changed. It used to be an or, so now it needs to be all three of those things in order for the conduct to be considered sexual harassment. But again, I want to be really clear that just because that there may not be one of those listed doesn't mean that that conduct isn't covered somewhere else, right? So we're going to get into these three buckets. So sex discrimination can show up in several different ways. Y'all probably are very familiar with this already, but the first bucket, who can give me an example of what conditioning, the provision of an aid, benefit, or who can give me an example of what that is? Yes.
I'll give you a raise if you
Yes.
whatever.
I will give you a raise. I will give you the job. I will give you the thing if you do this for me, if you do this sexual favor for me, whatever it is, right? This is called quid pro quo, right? That's one bucket, right? The next bucket is going to be what we just talked about in that other little circle, So unwelcome conduct determined by a reasonable person to be so severe, persistent, and objectively offensive, right? But again, we just went over that and has changed. It's now an and. It has to be all three of those things in order to be considered sexual harassment. Or our third bucket here is going to encompass all the other pieces of sexual harassment. So sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, or stalking. So it's generally, that's how our policy breaks down, and that's how the regulations break down into 3 buckets for sexual harassment. Do I have any questions so far? No, doing good. Sprinting, got it. So let's say in your capacity, you are sitting with a student who discloses to you that something happened, right? They've experienced some form of sexual violence, or really, if they disclose to you that they have experienced any type of violence, right? I want to make sure that folks understand that we have a lot of resources and reporting options that can fit or meet the needs for students or even other faculty or staff that may come to you and share with you as colleagues about things that they've experienced, right? But specifically for students, these resources are all located on our website. So a lot of times folks don't really even know where to start. They have no idea. Under those circumstances, right, it's perfectly acceptable for y'all in your capacity to reach out to myself or Murphy and be like, hey, so I have a student in my office right now and we don't really know where to start. Or maybe you get some email traffic from a student that discloses something in an email and you're like, I have absolutely nowhere to begin with this student. Like, how do I effectively help them get what they need right now? Like triaging what their needs are and getting them what they need. So please don't hesitate to contact us directly, forward us that email traffic and ask for help. Some of the other options, so we're the Title IX office is a semi-confidential resource, right? Some of the other, like the other confidential options we have are the Campus Violence Response Center, and of course the Counseling Center, right? But we're going to talk a little bit more about semi-confidential and completely confidential in a second. But I just want to completely, make everybody aware that if at any point in time you ever have any questions about where to begin or where to direct somebody who's experienced violence, please don't hesitate to just email us and give us a call. We're happy to help and answer those questions. So I kind of highlighted this just a little bit already as one of our resources, but the campus, how many people already know where and what the Campus Violence Response Center is? Yes, awesome. Okay, so as a quick review for folks that know, Campus Violence Response Center is blanketed in confidentiality as part of being located in the GHOST Student Health Center, and it's in the bottom floor, and we offer 2 different services. So advocacy and actual counseling. So the biggest differences between advocacy and counseling are going to be that that counseling is clinically based. It's your traditional long-term, continuing clinically based therapy for folks that have experienced violence, not just sexual violence, but any kind of violence, right? Advocacy is going to be exactly what it sounds like, right? So empowerment, accompaniment, safety planning, support groups. Perhaps they are not necessarily, a survivor isn't necessarily in need of or ready for clinical therapy or counseling. Perhaps they just need accompaniment to go talk to their professor about accommodations they might need, and they don't want to do that alone. Or they need accompaniment to go get a 50B or a 50C, so a restraining order. Advocates can go with them to accompany them through that process because honestly, it can be a little overwhelming. Advocates can also accompany victims and survivors through a Title IX process. So let's say that they want to report to the university about what they've experienced. Advocates come into those meetings with myself and Murphy all the time. And we're also happy to go down to the Campus Violence Response Center and meet with a student there as well, because our offices are not as comfy as the Campus Violence Response Center. They're a little cold, not as warm and inviting necessarily as the CVRC. So that's a little bit about the Campus Violence Response Center. If you encounter a victim or survivor that is like, nope, I know that I want confidential resources, this would be the place for that. So there are a lot of ways that we get information, or that information comes from the Title IX office. I would argue that a lot of times we get information like through referrals, essentially. So someone encounters something, like faculty or staff or folks that would be working in your capacities, right, that you're in this training for, that they encounter and they're working with a student and they don't really know where to start or how to best, handle the situation. So we get an email or a quick phone call like, hey, can I get help with this? And that's how we get information. But we get information a lot of different ways, right? So we get it from the Dean of Students office, from the police. We have co-investigators that work in human resources that we partner with. The provost office, same thing. Housing and Residence Life, and then the CVRC does refer to us, but only with the the client that they're working with, only with their consent, right? So they can't just pick up the phone and call us without the client's consent. Ooh, here comes the fun part. So you're like, this is all really great information, but like, when do I need to call you? So I know that I have like a pretty diverse group in here in terms of job titles, et cetera. So I'm gonna review this and try and break that down a little bit based on who I have in front of me. So in terms of reporting obligations, right, that doesn't mean that you're investigating, right, but just reporting. Employees, so most UNCG employees are encouraged but not required to report. But within your particular department, right, you may have departmental reporting obligations. So while you might not be considered, what we'll get to in a second, officials with authority, so you might not be a dean or an RA, but your department may have reporting requirements where they want you to share that information with us, right? Confidential employees, those are going to be licensed medical, clinical, or mental health professionals. So we designated and like I said, blanketed Go Student Health Center in that confidential role. So Counseling Center and CVRC, those folks are completely confidential, right? And they can only report under specific circumstances. Like they have permission to share that information with us, or if there's harm, the person is exhibiting that they want to harm themselves or others. So the big one is the official with authority. Any employee that's designated as an official with authority to institute corrective measures, that is the person who needs to report, right? And to make things really easy, we have a complete list of who those folks are on our website. So some of you may already know because of your title, like perhaps, like for example, Robert is considered an official with authority. Folks that are heads of your offices, because I do see some of those faces in here, y'all are officials with authority, right? And if you have, or I may have RAs, because I don't know how many students I have in here, but I might have some RAs or CRLs. Y'all have already received this training too. Y'all are going to be considered officials with authority. So some of you have already, like some of you may not be considered officials with authority. You might be employees, but I would encourage you to double check with your department about what your departmental reporting requirements are. The biggest thing for us as an office is, again, if someone comes into you and shares that they have been impacted by sexual violence or impacted by violence, right? Just reach out to us and give us a call and see if there is anything that we can direct you to immediately so that you can help this person put more tools in their toolbox so that they can get to where they need to go as quickly as possible, right? So how do people even make reports, right? So there are a couple of ways, right? Giving us a call, that's Murphy's direct telephone number up there. You can just give us a call and do it over the phone, right? There's also an online reporting form through Maxient. I know there are lots of folks in here that are already familiar with Maxient. So there is that. And then you can also send us an email to our Title IX inbox, or I know that a lot of folks are, obviously really familiar with both Murphy and I's emails, which are listed at the end. You can just email us directly as well to start that process. Some folks may have questions about what the heck happens after you report, right? So you're going to get the person who reports, right? The victim or survivor that reports this information is going to receive a reach out from the university. So someone is going to initially reach out by telephone, right? and then they're gonna get an email reach out of all of the resources. The whole point of having the phone call first is to not just cold call or, well, cold email somebody a whole bunch of resources when they might not have any idea that that's coming, right? So they might not have any idea. We want to be really, really soft with that handoff by giving them the phone call first. Then if we don't hear from them, they get a confidential reach out via telephone by the CVRC just to check in. If we still don't hear anything from them, they'll get one final reach out via email through the university. They can use these resources, they can exercise these options if they want to. If they don't, that's okay. So they have complete agency about what direction they want to go. Boom. What questions do folks have about, because I know that I sprinted through that relatively quickly, but what questions do folks have about some of the things that I went over? Yeah.
So because we advise student groups, you're considered mandatory reporters, or is that not the case? I'm looking at the list and I don't see us in there, but I know we all got emails about having to go through the campus security module and everything.
Through your CSAs, you mean? I'm gonna say because you are going through that departmental training for CSAs as well, I would say that the department has, like, that departmental obligation, like you, for example, are going to be designated as an official with authority, like, because of your other titles, right? So in this capacity, if this is the only role that you hold, because of the other program, like the other trainings that you're involved in, I would say that your department is telling you that, like, you do need to report. Does that make sense? I know that there are folks that are holding 2 roles right now. Who else? No. Going once. Going twice. Sold. Okay. If y'all do have any questions, please, like I said, Murphy and I love getting questions. Don't hesitate to call us with any of those. We're happy to help and talk through situations and scenarios with y'all. Okay. Awesome. Am I the last one of the day? Yo. Woohoo. Woohoo. Yeah, that's right. I hope y'all have a good rest of your day. Okay?
Thank you.
Bye, y'all. All righty. So that is all of the information that we have. And of course, you all should have received this. Have you heard? Okay. Awesome. So go ahead and complete that. And what questions do you have for me?
I did not receive.
You did not.
I seem to get every other communication. I don't know what that is. Sometimes actors having to forward me things because I'm just not getting.
And what group do you advise?
Try Sigma.
Talk to me after. I'll make sure that we have the updated information for that. But any other questions? No question is too big, no question is too small. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions after this. I do not exist in a silo that you will only get to talk to me today. I work in the EUC. Come visit me. Love visitors. Kind of busy these days with homecoming and whatnot, but please stop by. I'm always looking for friendly, familiar faces. Yes, so this entire presentation will be recorded, and this presentation itself, the PowerPoint, will be made available on our website. If you all could just give me until tomorrow or Thursday to upload everything and email you, that would be great. And if you do not receive any information, I'm going to put my email in the chat for folks. Please email me and I will make sure that that is rectified. And when you email me, let me know what group you advise as well. But if you all have no further questions, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your afternoon. Please take your goodie bags and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. The fair is in town. It's Dollar Tuesday. Go get a funnel cake for $1 or go ride some rides. Not sure if that's your thing, but go out and be great. Thank y'all. Thank you, everyone.